So to me, it seemed like for the future, we would either, I thought the best thing, we would have to think about what is the best way. Do we want to keep doing this kind of like exploration into the nature of empathy and having more of like a esoteric discussion about it? And if so, is the design process the best way to do that? And then if not, because my understanding that I got from you was that you were more interested in the application of empathy, like how to actually raise the level of empathy, and there's like an action component to it. So then if it is the action component, I do think that the design process is like the best way to go. Um, but then the question becomes, um, well then how can we frame the project, like the design project, so that it doesn't become something where how can we like frame it to like the team so that it does become about the application and not about like the just about the exploration of empathy, or less emphasis on it and more emphasis on the application.
Okay, so see, it's kind of like it's kind of like a question that you're posing. Part of it is that do we want to explore the nature of empathy, kind of have this esoteric discussion, and that you're hearing from me that I'm looking for the kind of the action component, and for that action component, that human-centered design is good, and it's like how do we frame the scope? I didn't say scope, but it's like how do we frame it so that it becomes about the application of empathy versus about this esoteric discussion about the nature of empathy. Like, what is the vocabulary? You know, how do you frame the question to make it geared towards the application? Are you still there? Uh-oh. Hey, Jeff, you there? I'm not hearing you or seeing you. Oh,
Hello?
yep,
Sorry,
I'm
I
there.
yeah, it froze.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I bumped the bandwidth down a little bit more to
yeah,
maybe that'll help.
yeah. So yeah, sorry, you were in the middle of your reflection.
Oh yeah, it was you were hearing that I wanted more the application of or the action component, the application of empathy, and for that you're feeling that human-centered design is good, and you're posing the question of how do we frame the scope so that it's geared towards the application of empathy. So it's kind of like a question of how do we narrow it to be geared towards application versus like a philosophical esoteric discussion.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then in terms of that framing, I was wondering what would be the best way to do that. Like, sh if it's if we should have a design challenge that's already scoped down. So like, for example, having it already scoped down, so it would be like, how do we what can we do to raise the level of empathy at the Oakland hub, or how do we raise the level of empathy in BART, um, and things like that. Um, so that was just something that I was exploring this week
Hmm.
in terms of like the future of like the team. So yeah, that's
Okay, so you're thinking that to scope it down is maybe like what is the level of empathy in the hub? That would be a clear scope, or maybe in BART, but have like these clear scopes.
yeah, and even if we um yeah, I mean
And that's going forward too. You're thinking of as we go forward, or do it again, or do another iteration to kind of start with that. Oh, Flores again.
hello?
Oh, I'm just turning off my video. You could turn off your video if you want.
Okay. Yeah, I think
Yeah, it
that
might
would
give
be
us
better.
more bandwidth. We don't need to see each other.
Yeah. Um, what were you saying?
I was just uh, reflecting that you were looking at the level of empathy applied to the hub, how to raise, scope it down to that, and that do that maybe the next iteration. I mean, starting from that point, or having a clear scope of raising empathy in the hub, or like on BART, something like that. So you have a really clearly defined
Yeah.
scope.
Um, yeah, yeah, so I guess I'm also wondering what your thoughts are on it.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so that's what I think too. I think it was my sense is going forward. I wish, in a sense, now. I mean, this is what I'm learning at least is, have a really clearly defined scope from the beginning, and have it really actionable, as if the hub is coming to us and saying, "Hey, we want to hire you to raise the level of empathy here at the hub." And that, so that we have that clearly defined scope. My sense is that we have a really, a clearly defined scope, that will raise the level of the action and kind of keep us from getting so esoteric and into, because the esoteric philosophical discussion is like unending. I've been doing it for 6 years, and it's in the academia, it's like just ongoing. There's no end to it.
Hmm. Yeah, so I hear that you were thinking along the same lines of having to scope it down further and making it more defined right from the beginning. So for example, like, as if we were being hired by the Oakland hub to raise the level of empathy there. Um, and and you were saying for the past 6 years, like that kind of philosophical, esoteric mode of discussion is what you've been doing and what you've been seeing a lot from like academia.
Yeah.
And it's kind of ongoing and it's almost like never ending because you can just keep going deeper.
And yeah, exactly. And so it's looking at that. And my sense is, if we have a very narrow scope of an organization like the hub, that's transferable to other situations. So it's actually, we're kind of doing the esoteric exploration, that kind of happens in the background. So we'll be exploring the nature of empathy, but we're also bringing in more action component, where we're actually creating something and hopefully coming up with some new innovations as well.
Yeah. So you're saying that um, to scope it down to something like the hub, and then even if we were to scope it down to something like that, what we learn from doing that design challenge that's been scoped down to something like the hub will still it whatever we that comes out of it will still be transferable to other and applicable to other situations.
Yeah, that's at least my thought. That if we're working on one narrow, small organization, that's just a representative organization for other organizations. So what we develop for one organization, it should be transferable to other organizations. But we need that, really narrow focus.
Yeah, so you're saying that even with that narrow focus, doing it for something like the hub, it's kind of like a representative of any other organization. So whatever we learn should be transferable to any other organization too.
Yeah, and at least doing this, we're kind of learning.
Yeah,
Kind of learning from the experience. Keep refining and getting clearer. So hopefully we're kind of just. But it's kind of. I guess the question is, what do we do now?
yeah, yeah. So you had a question of what do we do now?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm heard about that. Thanks.
Yeah, I had the same thought too. That whatever we learn, it will be universal, and maybe we can even use like the toolkit as like the glue that holds all the work together. Like each iteration of the design project might have a different scope, but maybe the glue that can hold everything together is that whatever we learn, no matter what the scope is, it can be transferred into like one like universal toolkit keeps that you can keep adding on to, almost kind of like a open source like wiki kind of thing.
Uh-huh. So you're saying that whatever the scope is around, I guess you're meaning because it's on the topic of empathy, that whatever the scope is that we have around that, that it all fits into maybe like empathy wiki. I'm kind of adding there, but that's kind of what I'm understanding.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, I mean, looking at like the other, like the three like challenges that IDEO set up for this course, it seems like none of the other challenges has like the same um qualities that ours has, because ours is surrounding empathy, which is something where I feel like it lends itself towards like that more like philosophical kinds of discussions, whereas for example, the the challenge about um like financial literacy, that like was one of the challenges that IDEO had for the course, and I feel like that doesn't have like the same quality like empathy. Like I feel like it's much harder to have a philosophical discussion about what is financial literacy and how is it defined? What is the nature of financial literacy? I feel like those aren't like questions that you would ask naturally. So I think that's why for us, because empathy is such a um, undefined and ambiguous thing right now, we have to be really careful about how we scope it so that it makes sense to do a design project on it instead of having like just like a normal, like a philosophical or academic discussion about it.
So you're saying that the IDEO challenges that they have don't have that broadness to them and that potential for as much ambiguity like empathy does. So because empathy has that possibility of being very you know, uh, ambiguous, that we need to be very clear and focused on the scoping of the challenge.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so I guess like the main thing is that this might be something that's worth putting a lot of thought into, um, how we scope it before like the next iteration begins. Like what is the best way to scope it so that it becomes appropriate for the design challenge?
And what we should do is put a lot of thought into the scoping of it for the next iteration, because it's such an important part of it, and really give it some, I don't know if you, but thought, and really put some thought into it.
Yeah, I feel heard about that.
Okay, my sense too is that, they, with IDEO, they have like a very broad challenge, a narrow challenge, I mean a middle sized, and then a very narrow. And they say go for the middle, in terms. But my sense is that because we're also learning human-centered design, that kind of the narrower the scope, it kind of restricts, maybe would be more actionable, as well as give more space for learning the process.
Yeah. So you're saying that, IDEO recommends to choose like that sweet spot between some challenge that's really broad and something that's really narrow. But your sense is that because everyone on the team is learning the process for the first time, maybe it makes more sense to go for the narrower challenge and go even narrower than they recommend.
Yeah. So that's just an idea that came to me, as well as having a narrow focus too. I'm also looking about how do we continue. We've got a couple more meetings, and I'm looking at how do we develop more of a relationship with the hub to have I would ideally, like to have an ongoing kind of design project around the hub, because it's a space, it's a community. It seems like there's things that we could develop in terms of more challenges, putting more teams together, or having our team grow, or having some relationship with the hub, so that we have a space, and that we're doing something for them, and that there's this space for an ongoing relationship to develop. So kind of that's another part of it.
Yeah, so you were also thinking about how do we keep an ongoing relationship with the Oakland hub, um, so that so we can keep doing more design challenges around the hub in the future.
Yeah, and do a workshop there. And I guess the other question is how do we keep that? What is your vision for how we could keep the developing and building a relationship with them?
So you're wondering also about what my vision is for how we keep an ongoing relationship with them, so we can keep doing workshops and different projects around the hub.
Yeah, because I see it in terms of, I see it as maybe a launching point, for doing other empathy kind of projects. If we can get something together around the hub that works, and that they say, hey, this is really good. We do a workshop at the hub, maybe a design workshop on how might we raise the level of empathy at the hub, and do a design project zero there around that, and have the members and maybe the staff or whoever else wants to join, that could be like a next stepping stone to deepening the relationship, and kind of seeing what evolves out of that, and that could be like a prototype for taking the other organizations. Is kind of like one idea I have.
So so yeah, you see like like your vision is that you see the Oakland hub as like a launching point for all the things that'll like all the work that we're doing around empathy. Um, and so you wanted to keep that relationship going with the hub, and then like whatever we do with the hub, we can take the learnings and then we can apply it to anything else.
Yeah, and hopefully kind of set up some consulting. If we can do something successful at the hub, we can go into some other organization and say, hey, here we can offer these workshops, a church or a nonprofit or maybe a for-profit or a school, and say, here's some tools and some processes we can lead you through to raise the level of empathy in your organization.
Sorry, I didn't catch the last sentence.
Yeah, it's creating a process to raise the level of empathy, in an organization like the Hub, that we can take that process and those learnings and offer that as a service to other organizations like
Hmm.
schools or nonprofits or churches or maybe activist groups or whatever, that it could be something, a service to
Oh,
offer.
yeah. So you're saying that once we start doing more things at the Oakland Hub and start having like tangible projects and workshops that are successful, we can take what we learn from that and then we can offer those services to any other like organization in like a really broad sense, like companies or schools or different activist groups, um, and make it kind of like a consulting
Yeah,
format. So that was your vision for how for like the next like the stepping stones, and you see
yeah,
like the Impact Hub as being the first stepping stone
yeah, exactly.
for that.
Yes, I feel heard. Yeah, so just kind of wondering how you would see things maybe progressing.
Definitely, I definitely have a really similar like that was my line of thinking too. I'm also wondering like how we can start that conversation with everyone at the hub that we've already been talking to. Um, because it seems like that would be another leap we would have to make in our relationship with them. Because right now, it's still, Fedor giving us, using his like the work time that he has as from being a member and volunteering his time there. Um, and I'm thinking that from their point of view, we're still inside of that container. So it seems like it would have to be another leap that we would have to make to say that we want to have like an ongoing relationship with you outside of that container of the hours that we get. So I'm also wondering how we can build up to that. Um, and I think we definitely do have like a foundation to do that because we are already, because of those interviews that we've already done with like the founders and the CEO. Um, so I'm just wondering what are like the next steps to make sure that we can build from that foundation.
So let's see.
Yeah. Oh no.
Um, so you're seeing that we have a relationship now that's within a certain container, and that's with Fedora giving us space, and that to move, towards that next step, we would have to make a leap into kind of a larger, different container. And it's kind of the question is how do we build up to that? And that we do have this foundation, having interviewed the staff and the founder. And so how do we make that transition to that next step or that next container, kind of to like maybe a larger container or another container, a different relationship? And putting and it's starting a conversation. I'm not sure if you're having a conversation with the hub and or with our team.
Yeah. And I'm also wondering, because I know there are some members of our team that's interested in continuing this, and I wonder in what capacity they're thinking of. Um, so I think that would be interesting too, because then that would make it easier for us to take everything that we learned from this team and have a group of people that's already been through it once, so that next time when we do have a more specific scope, there's like a sense of continuity there too. Um, but yeah, I still think that another like way to move us forward in that relationship with the hub is through that first workshop that we're planning to do. I think if we have like a workshop, if we host a workshop there that really shows like how much value that we can add by doing these kinds of workshops, I think that would really be like a way to move us forward with them. Because then that would put us more into like a reciprocal relationship, because they'll see that we have just as much to add to for them as much as they're contributing for us. So I really think like the biggest out of all the threads, I think the biggest thread for me is to just put a lot of effort into that workshop, and then to make sure that we have something that really has like a really great quality that's very clear for the people at the hub.
Okay, so so it's to you're looking at that it's how do we build up to that? We have a foundation already with the staff and the founder, having done interviews with them, and then seems to be the next part is like what our team is. What is how do they want to? Some people have said they want to continue, but it's maybe about finding out more about what everyone's vision is for going forward. And then to have a sense of continuity to the next step. Since we've gone through this, it'd be good to have a sense of continuity with our team going forward. And a way to move forward that you're seeing is doing a really good workshop, because a workshop would show value, and that would be something that would develop more of a reciprocal relationship with the hub. That the biggest thread yeah, so the workshop is really the biggest piece kind of going forward, you know, to have a something that shows like a reciprocal relationship and something that's contributing to them, so it's not just them offering space for us, but that we're offering something for them too.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel heard. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I'm kind of seeing it too, is in terms of what does everyone else see as going forward? What would they like, and getting a sense of that, because you know, I want to go forward. My sense is you want to go forward towards that. I'm thinking Jane does too, and I'm not sure with the others, you know, what they have in mind, or even kind of what their vision is.
Yeah, so you're saying that you feel like you're ready to move forward, and you get the sense that I feel ready to move forward too, and um, we also don't know exactly how the other members are feeling, but another person that seems like is she wants to move forward is Jane. Um, yeah.
So it might be a matter of just having a conversation with everyone.
Yes, it might be a matter of just having like that conversation with everyone, like that is in the team.
Yeah, and so that's like one part of it. The other is I had talked with Jane, and she was seeing like how do we move from where we are to doing the workshop to have like small steps, and like the interviewing is one step, and then um, I guess like planning the workshop and um, so we had chatted a little bit about it, but I think we need to kind of need to continue.
Okay, so you and Jane already had a conversation about the possibility of doing workshops and moving forward,
Sort of. It's a
but
little, yeah. It's we kind of touched on it in terms of like how to do the workshop in the sense of kind of easing into it, like not just saying, hey, let's do a workshop. Is like we do the interviews and then we do some small steps. It kind of builds the I guess starts building the container for that.
yeah, so you feel like you kind of have had that conversation, but you didn't go all the way with it.
Yeah,
So it's about how do we start building that conversation.
yeah, and I think it was, the interviews have been good, for kind of raising the level of involvement. And, I talked to Conda for about an hour, so I've got that interview and I want to write that up. And see, there's the other part is that with the team, how we focus, how it's gotten kind of that esoteric quality of, getting into the having a lot with the nature of empathy. Yeah, I'm not sure what, I was trying to like steer it towards being more focused on the hub itself. I mean, for me, I mean, in retrospect, ideally we would have said, how do we do something like, how do we raise the level of empathy at the hub? Imagine that the hub is our client. They've come to us, said, hey, we need more empathy here. How would we go about raising the level of empathy there? And that would have really kind of narrowed the scope, and we kind of left it open that everybody went to their own projects, what was of interest to them, and then they kind of brought all that back. But I think that really opened it up too. Like it's like everybody was going in their own kind of thinking about their own projects, so that it didn't have that focus that maybe would make it easier for some action component, as well as that would have created the track of kind of focusing on the hub. So
Yeah, so you're saying that right now there's kind of like an unfocused quality to the team where like, we're talking about the about empathy in general in that philosophical way and about the nature of empathy, and then the way it's applied is through everyone's own personal um projects or different things that they're passionate about. But there's no like there wasn't like one like thing that we all agreed upon from the very beginning, as like an application, and you feel that we should have like a focus from the beginning because of
yeah,
that.
but we didn't. But we live and learn. It's kind of I'm kind of wondering how that resonates. That kind of idea. I mean, that would have been a more focused approach, which would have led to kind of a more efficiency. I was just wondering if and it's like here we are now. What do we do from this point? So
Yeah. So you're also wondering about how that resonates, and you're also just thinking, well, here we are now, like now how do we move on?
Yeah.
Um,
So one thing is to have a conversation with everyone about how they see things moving forward. And then the other is, yeah, what do we do now with, we're kind of moving towards interviewing, and it seems to me that, with the time we have, that would be just, that's a big project already. If we can kind of move towards having some steps towards interviewing, then everybody actually goes and kind of interviews at the hub, and we use that as the prototype, something like that.
yeah, so you're thinking that we need to have this conversation with the team members, and also that um, right now it seems like the tangible thing that we're moving towards are the interviews. So maybe that can be our prototyping is the team members interviewing the people at the hub, and that would be one way to move forward.
Yeah, that would be a step towards, dialoguing with the hub and seeing what their needs are around empathy.
Yeah. So you're thinking that that would be a way to move things forward in terms of creating that relationship with the hub, and also continuing like the work with the empathy that we've already been doing.
Yeah, so that's it. Yeah, thanks. I feel heard.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely think that that is a conversation that we need to have, is like how can we move forward and how can we honor like our own intentions and what we want in terms of the work that we're doing. And I think we're both kind of at a place where we want to start applying. But also, how do we honor what we've all done as a team? Because I think, we have a lot of great things that came out of this iteration, um, within our discussions about empathy. So how do we honor that? How do we honor both things moving forward? That's a question that I have. Um, yeah.
Yeah, so you've got the question that of how do we honor what we've done as a team, and there are a lot of good things have come up, from what we've done, but how to honor that what we have done as a team.
Yeah. Um, and another thought that came to my mind was that I think one thing that's really hard is the fact that we're all going to be in different places in our lives in terms of empathy. Um, I mean, I feel like, I even got the same sense within our own team too, um, which is that I feel like you've already spent so much time doing that kind of like a more philosophical exploration of empathy.
Uh-huh.
And like empathy is something that you've been explicitly thinking about and working on for years, but most people that are going to be coming into this project won't have that same experience. So I feel like that's why it's so engaging for them to even to
Uh,
just have that philosophical discussion about empathy is like already really engaging, and that might be all they need to be satisfied. Um, so that's kind of another like challenge that I'm thinking of, is how do we accommodate for the difference in where we're going to be at. Um,
yeah, so you're saying that people have going to be at different places in their lives related to empathy. And then I've been doing all this philosophical kind of exploration, but the people coming into this initially, that they'll actually be kind of find that philosophical exploration kind of engaging and something that they're actually wanting to do.
yeah. Um,
And that you want to honor kind of what we've done as a group, and also, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm really wondering how we can bridge that, and if we were to do something with a much narrower scope that's really more action oriented, um, how do we incorporate an element of that philosophical discussion? Because I feel like on some level that's always going to exist, because even if it is something that's applied as a team, we would still have to have a definition, and like we would have to start making working our way through ambiguity, and I think part of that is creating like a common understanding of what empathy is. Um, so I think on some level, especially towards like the beginning when it's all about expanding in that discover phase, I think there's always going to be an element of that. So I think another challenge is how do we make sure that that fits in to the process while still making sure that we don't that doesn't become like the only thing, like with as much emphasis placed on it as it is right now. I feel like with our team, um, yeah,
Yeah, so you're looking at wondering how to bridge that, seeing kind of a philosophical exploration versus actionable, and that when people come into this, that they might want more of a philosophical understanding to create a maybe like a common understanding about what empathy is, and how to bridge that kind of philosophical exploration with the actionable component of it. And so you're just kind of sitting with the question of how to, hold those two and to bridge those two.
yeah, um, and especially with like the differing levels of experience with empathy that everyone is going to bring. Um, so yeah, I feel heard
Uh-huh.
about that.
Let me just write this down. Okay, so when people come into a team, they're going to be bringing different levels of understanding about kind of the nature of empathy, and so that's going to be something that comes up. Is people are going to be wanting to look for a common understanding about what empathy is, and kind of a philosophical kind of exploration, as well as the actionable component, kind of a more focused. So you're looking at how to bridge those two qualities.
Yeah, um, yeah, and I feel like the way we frame it is also really important too. I mean, I almost feel like making this conversation we're having right now about the difference between like the application and like the philosophical aspect of it. I think if we made that explicit with everyone from the beginning,
Mm.
that there's like these like two aspects of working on this design project. There's like the philosophical aspect of it, and then there's like the applied aspect of it. I think if we make it like explicit, conscious thing, I think that would also really help.
Yeah, so it's like this conversation we're having about these two components, about the philosophical and the actionable. If we actually made that explicable and conscious and part of the discussion, that would really help.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I feel heard.
Yeah, I really like that. That you're really good at. You always bring that about making things conscious and explicit and having the dialogue. So I think that really, I think that's. I'm kind of imagining even writing up what we're talking about so that we have create a little paper on it, or like from our conversation some of the issues that and have that available to talk about. Might be good.
Yeah. So you kind of like that idea of making the two aspects of it more explicit in the team, in the future, and you think that that would help um, focus like the project, I think.
Yeah. And the
Was
other
there
part, oh
anything?
no, yeah, that's it. Have a paper if we write up what we're talking about, have this conversation, make it into a readable piece that we can share with others. That
Yeah.
could be like a project. But there's the other thing that comes to me is that human-centered design, in the description, they say there's a bias towards action. So it's part of design that it is an action-oriented endeavor, and that we want to have this bias towards action. So in this philosophical versus action, if we're doing human-centered design, we're going by kind of agreement of doing human-centered design. We're saying we're going to move towards action.
Yeah, so you think that the design process already has a bias towards action. So the question is how can we set up the project it so that with the empathy it does lead towards action.
Yeah, and geared towards action. Um, and my sense is that if we're trying to work towards action, that all the philosophical that we'll be learning all of that because there'll be questions that come up that we'll want to kind of explore.
Wait, sorry, can you repeat that again?
That with a bias towards action, that as we're trying to come up with actionable items, that the philosophical comes up within that quest, but it doesn't like take over.
Yeah, so you're saying that in that process of coming up with like the action points of empathy, the philosophical parts will come up because it's necessary, but it won't take over.
Yeah. So it's a matter of what is the question that would frame it. What would be the framing? I really like. I mean, that really resonates. Like it's going to be about the framing, and I feel like I'm kind of learning about the framing as well. From our first workshop that we did, in terms of everybody talking about what I would have liked to have seen out of that first workshop that we did is like a body of work that was about how to raise the level of empathy at the church, and that would be like an ongoing, it would be like a body of work that could be built on, because I kind of feel like now, while it's great that everybody got these little insights and these prototypes and learned the process, that we could have made it even more kind of made it more actionable somehow. I mean, made it more of a, what am I looking for? The word. It's like more of a, we could have created something that could have started a ball rolling, more of a ball rolling, like at the church. It's something that others would start to engage in. Say, yeah, we really want to raise the level of empathy here at the church, and here's a bunch of ideas, and maybe we'll take some of these and work with them and build on them or something. It's like creating. It's like a snowball. Like I feel like we created a bit of a snowball, and it's rolling along, but we could have done something to create more of a snowball, that was rolling at the church. Maybe I'm wrong about all this, but that's just where my thinking is at the moment.
Yeah, so the original vision for working with the church was that we can keep working with the church, and as we do more like projects and workshops and different things like that, we would have like a growing body of work, and and um and you're thinking that there's something we do have like kind of like the ball rolling with like the insights we're generating, but there is more that we could have done to have like a even greater like snowballing effect. Um, but you're also thinking if you're wondering about if you're like thinking about this all right.
Yeah, well, it's a learning process. You know, I've been wrong so many times. So I'm going, oh, maybe I'm wrong about that, but yeah, maybe not. You know,
Yeah.
so it's learning. I feel like it's learning and trying. So
Yeah. Yeah, so for you, it feels like this whole thing is like a learning process, and you've been wrong so many times that you're kind of open about it, like about if you're wrong or not.
yeah,
You don't know which way it is.
yeah, but that's where my thought is now, and I'm kind of like wondering what you think about that. That might, from your perspective, what your insights are.
Yeah, so you're thinking about like what my insights are and what my thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I feel heard. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree that, I mean, this kind of goes back to what you were saying about how you wanted to have the ongoing relationship with the hub. I feel like there has to be some kind of ongoing relationship like that because if you wanted to like take this towards more towards like the action route, um, there has to be some like something that is already in place, kind of that would work as kind of like a testing ground for all these insights we're having. And if we don't have that, then there is no action. So I actually I really agree with what with that line of thinking that there needs to be like an ongoing um, growing body of work where like all the insights we're generating is actually applied to something in the real world.
Okay. Second. Okay, so it sounds like you were saying that you agreed with that, that we need a testing ground for all of our insights, and that there needs to be an ongoing, growing work that is applied to something in the real world.
Yeah, and maybe one way, yeah, I really do feel like one of the best ways that we can honor everything that happened in this iteration, but also move forward at the same time is to aggregate everything we've been learning into like a tangible toolkit or like a wiki, and that can be like a tool that we'll be able to use for the next iterations. Like that can be like the value proposition is that that can be a value proposition, and it can also be a way to frame um, the way in which we apply everything we've been learning is it can be framed as like we're like we have this toolkit and we want to do like more workshops to expand on this toolkit and like teach educate people on how to use this toolkit, and then at the same time use the workshops itself as a way to keep adding more things to the toolkit too. Um, and I've seen it, and I think it is useful to have some like a tangible document like that because I've seen examples of it. So like for example, that one toolkit online that I told you about a while ago, like the DIY toolkit. After they've created that and like put it up online and kind of generated publicity around it, they've been getting invited to go to like a bunch of different events and conferences to talk about the toolkit and to bring it to like more communities and people that can really make use of it. So I also see the toolkit as a way to move forward too,
Hmm.
and have something tangible that we can bring. Um, and another thought I had, oh actually sorry, before I go on like maybe I can get a reflection.
Okay. So one way you're saying to honor what everyone's aggregate idea is to honor everyone, and all that we've done is to aggregate all the learning into a toolkit or a wiki, and it's a tool that we can use for our next iteration, and that we can frame it as a toolkit and teach others how to use it and to build on the toolkit, and that we're kind of needing something tangible like a toolkit. And you're seeing the example of the DYI toolkit, that they put it out there, and with that is, you know, to show, they're invited to conferences and to other things, so that kind of like was a gateway to deeper involvement with others, and that so you're seeing creating a toolkit is a way forward.
Yeah. And then another thought that I had from when you were speaking about how there is a bias towards action in human-centered design, and that creating those action points would include like that philosophical aspect of empathy, but it wouldn't take over. And I actually feel that like this iteration of like the workshop is kind of like proof that even in an action-oriented process like human-centered design, it could actually, just the process by itself, I feel like isn't always enough to make sure that it doesn't become a purely philosophical natured project. And I feel like it would be important for us to really sit down and explicitly think about the relationship between the philosophical and action within the scope of the design process, to make sure that it always remains action oriented with momentum. Because I think what happened in this iteration was that the philosophical parts came up as we were going through the process, but then that's kind of taken over, more or less. I mean, we're still moving forward, but I feel like it's been moving forward in like a really, in a way that's not, I don't know how to articulate this completely, but I think a lot of the reasons why it feels like there's, I mean, I kind of have this feeling that we're moving through the human-centered design process, but in a way that's kind of, for me, it's a little bit confusing, and it feels like we're having to make a lot of effort to fit in what we're doing into the human-centered design process instead of it feeling natural. And I feel like a lot of it comes from the fact that this has turned into a project of a different nature, like a more philosophical nature, and that's why it's becoming, it feels like it's like we have to think outside the box in order to fit it into the original human-centered design process. So I think, you know, I kind of have a feeling that it's not something where the philosophical parts will naturally be contained just by going through the process. And there has to be something more to make sure that it does stay like action oriented.
Okay, so you're talking about the philosophical part and the action part, and looking at how to keep the philosophical, keep it from taking over. We still have it, but it doesn't take over, and this iteration is proof that human-centered design, the process itself, may not stop it from becoming philosophical. Um, and that it's, let's see, the philosophical came up and took over, you're saying, in what we're doing. That we're still moving forward, with the human-centered design, kind of the process and the action, but it feels that it's confusing. There's a lot of feeling of confusion, and it doesn't feel, the human-centered design part doesn't feel natural because it's kind of more philosophical, and we're having to like really work to kind of keep on track on the human-centered design process. So it's really, you're looking at what do we do to make the process, have the process so it kind of maintains an action-oriented quality, and that the philosophical doesn't take over. So it sounds like you're sitting with that question and looking for kind of strategies for how to do that.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So for me, I think another thread in terms of moving forward is for us to go back and reflect on all the workshops that happened and really reflect on what worked and what we feel could be improved. Um, and then bringing all the insights we gain from that into the next iteration. Um, between now and the next iteration, when the next iteration happens. Yeah.
So you're looking to go back and have a real reflection over the workshops and kind of what worked and what didn't before we start with next iteration.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel heard. Thank
Yeah.
you.
When do you like when would we do that? Because it seems like there's sort of a, at the end of the whole process, there's the moving forward section, that there's like a dialogue kind of happens at that point.
Yeah, I think we should build it into that for the whole team too. And I mean, I'm not sure what you were thinking was like the timeline of when the next iteration of this workshop begins too, but maybe in between this iteration and the next iteration, like over the summer, we can keep having our meetings in person, like we have and really go through like the entire like the last few weeks and see where were like the weak links and what were the moments where that brought us um, to this more like philosophical area and what can we do to honor that but at the same time still keep it in that action framework of the design process. So I think that that would be really useful for us.
Okay. So you're thinking that between now and the next iteration of the workshop, kind of in the summer, to think about kind of looking at the experience and how this relationship between the philosophical and the action-oriented, to think about that, and that would be useful, and that not clear about what the next iteration will be, or that when, or
Yeah, yeah, I feel heard.
yeah. Well, that's the thing, is to hear where everybody wants, for me, is where everyone wants to go with the next steps, how would everyone like to progress? Seems like now is a good time to think about that too, to get a sense, so we can kind of gear up for that.
Yeah. Um, and maybe as we end the workshop, maybe it would be important for you and I to meet up to make sure that that last reflection part of the workshop um, kind of goes over all these points that we have in terms of how to move forward.
Yeah, so you're thinking that we should get together and kind of have this exploration to talk about how to go
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, for me, I would have liked to have started the next iteration right away. You
Oh,
know,
okay.
it's I'm I feel that there's it's not clearly mapped out like what the next step is. You know that and that's part of not knowing where everyone else is.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of what they see, and you know, needs to just kind of hear where everyone else is. For me, I would like to have like an ongoing iteration, like you know, one ends and then we start up the next one, but that it's geared towards raising the level of empathy within the hub. You know, as a specific project, and that we start. Maybe that is almost like the focus, the narrow focus of how to raise the level of empathy at the hub and have it be like an ongoing iteration.
Yeah. So you wanted to, so you were thinking that you wanted to have the next iteration as soon as this one is over, and then you also wanted to make the next one focused on the hub, raising the level of empathy in the hub.
Yeah, and maybe that would be a focus to kind of, um, I guess, give a direction, you know, a clearer direction.
Yeah, so you're feeling that that would give it like a sense of direction for the next iteration, and then also moving forward. And also I have to go in like about 3 minutes,
Oh, okay.
but I so I mean yeah,
Yeah, I feel heard. You don't. Yeah, if you just
okay,
want to just chat, just for.
yeah. I mean for me it seems like there's like three different. Well, for me I would I feel like before starting the next iteration, before jumping into it, I feel like for me, it makes sense to do like a period of reflection to make sure that we bring everything we learned from this iteration fully into the next one. Um, so for me, it seems like there's like three separate discussions that need to happen. One with like the team to get a sense of how they want each individual person in our team wants to move forward. And then a discussion between you and I um, to discuss how we want to move forward, and then a discussion with like the Impact Hub Oakland to see how we could move forward with them. So for me, it seems like there's like three like moving forward discussions that needs to happen.
Okay, so let's see. Try to get this. So three, a period of reflection and about moving forward. Where does each person want to move forward? How do Jeff and Edwin want to move forward? Where does each person want to move forward, and how does the hub want to move forward? Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, well, then, and how long do you see that reflection going? How long do we think we need to reflect?
Um, I guess it depends on how frequently we meet and how much we talk, but I mean, I still share that same sense of urgency as you in terms of going into our next iteration, so I would want to go through it as fast as, give it as much time as needed, but not anything more than that, so that we can keep moving forward. Um, but I think what we really need to figure out is how because I think what we're doing is like pretty new in terms of exploring empathy within the framework of human-centered design.
Yeah,
And because human-centered design already has an element of empathy within the process itself, I think that's what makes it so complex. and just the fact that empathy too is like so nebulous and like you can just keep going deeper and deeper into it. Um, so I think both of those is what makes it so difficult. And I think if we wanted to really um, if we wanted to like have a next iteration that really does bring in everything we learned from this first iteration, I really feel like we need to reflect enough so that we kind of figure out how we can go through the design process the next time around, and really make it more effective in terms of finding out how to make the empathy actionable. Um, so that's mainly what I wanted to figure out first before moving to the next iteration to make sure that the next iteration is does like address all the concerns and things that we've had from this iteration.
Are you open for starting some dialogues about that? I mean, we could
Yeah,
just do like we're doing now. We're kind of doing that.
yeah,
And I was thinking I could kind of start reaching out to others and have like, I was gonna thinking of an email to Jane and say, hey, would you like to just discuss like what you're seeing as the next? So just maybe doing some initial dialogues about that because we had kind of touched on it and I laid out some ideas and we never had the time because this is really time consuming. It's amazingly it takes a lot of time. So. But I could
yeah,
start initiating some conversations to at least hear where people are.
yeah, yeah. I can help out with that too.
Okay. Do you want to pick someone and I'll pick somebody and start? You seem to
Uh,
be connected with Heather.
yeah, I can talk to Heather.
Okay. I'll work on Alex and Jane.
Okay, okay,
Would that work? Okay. So we
yeah.
got that. And then should we schedule another meeting? Do you have some time between now and next Tuesday or to have another dialogue around this, or are you on time?
Uh, Let me check my schedule really quick. I think Monday would work for me.
Okay, that's Memorial Day.
Yeah. Does that work for you, or
That
did you
works.
have plans?
Nope. 10
Okay.
a.m. or 9 or
Yeah, uh, 10 a.m.
okay.
Do you want to do it at your house?
Yeah, we could. That'd be good. I won't have to worry about audio.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Okay, I
Uh,
think we have a pretty good plan.
yeah, me too.
Okay, great.
Okay, much appreciation. I feel really good that there's a sense of clarity evolving,
Yeah.
so I feel good about that.
Yeah,
Really
me too.
appreciate your contributions, really enjoying those too, feeling a lot of support.
Yeah, I really feel like we come up with pretty good ideas when we talk. We just have to, I think it's just about um just doing it.
uh, just iterating, I think.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Yeah, so I guess I'll see you on Monday.
okay, see you Monday. Yeah,
Okay, have a good weekend.
you too. Bye.
Bye, Edwin.